When Aisha was born, her mother Sarah held her so close that it felt like the world finally made sense. A little girl with soft hands and bright eyes who became the center of her universe. But life is cruel with the ones who love too deeply. Sarah worked as a housemaid in a large mansion, dusting other people's luxury, while dreaming of giving her daughter everything she never had. She carried Aisha on her back while cleaning floors and whispered promises that one day Aisha would rise above all of this. She wanted her daughter to eat well, dress well, study in the best school, and live with dignity, even if it meant sacrificing her own meals, sleep, and pride. Sarah sent Aisha to an elite school where rich children arrived in cars with tinted windows, while Aisha arrived holding her mother's hand. But the children in the school laughed at her. They asked, "Who is this woman who dresses like a servant?" And Aisha felt her face burn with shame. Deep down, she loved her mother. But the environment taught her that love was something to hide. She started walking ahead, pretending she didn't know Sarah. And each time Sarah tried to touch her cheek, she pulled away. Sarah smiled anyway, believing her daughter was growing independent, unaware of the storm building inside her heart. Years passed and Aisha became beautiful, confident, and cold. She lived in a world where money decided respect, and she told everyone her mother lived abroad. She created stories to hide her truth, and Sarah watched her daughter drift farther and farther like a boat carried away by strong waves. Aisha now spent most of her time with rich friends who mocked poverty, and she laughed with them, trying desperately to fit in, even if it meant breaking the heart that raised her. One day, Aisha's best friend Maya visited her home and saw Sarah washing clothes in the small courtyard. Maya later teased Aisha in front of everyone, calling her the daughter of a servant, and Aisha's pride shattered. She felt her world collapse in humiliation. She ran home that evening with eyes full of anger, not tears. And when she reached home, she saw her mother cooking a simple meal waiting for her with the same gentle smile she always had. But Aisha exploded. She screamed at Sarah, telling her never to come near her, never to show her face to her friends, never to appear in her school. She blamed her for ruining her reputation. She said words she never imagined saying, words that sliced straight through her mother's heart. Sarah stood still like someone slapped by the world itself. And even then she said softly, "I only wanted to see if you were okay." That night Sarah cried silently, covering her mouth so her daughter wouldn't hear her pain. Her tears fell into the rice she was washing. But she kept preparing Aisha's lunch for the next morning, pretending nothing was wrong, because mothers break, but they don't let their children see the pieces. Aisha, meanwhile, slept without guilt, believing she did the right thing, believing her mother was holding her back from the life she deserved. A few days later, the school held a ceremony where parents were invited. Aisha begged Sarah not to come. She cried, pleaded, screamed, and Sarah finally agreed, telling her she would stay home. But inside her heart something cracked. Still, she ironed Aisha's uniform, set her shoes, cleaned her backpack, and kissed it when no one was watching. Morning came, and Aisha left in a hurry, leaving Sarah standing at the door watching her with eyes full of love and worry. But love could not silence a mother's heart. Sarah could not resist seeing just a glimpse of her daughter receiving her award. So she went anyway. Standing far outside the school gate, hidden behind a tree, she waited, hoping Aisha wouldn't see her. Inside the auditorium, Aisha stood on stage smiling as the principal praised her, and the crowd clapped. But then someone whispered, "Isn't that her mother outside looking like a maid?" Aisha's face turned pale. She ran outside, burning with shame and anger. She grabbed Sarah by the arm so harshly that Sarah stumbled. Aisha yelled, asking why she came when she was told not to, and people watched as the rich daughter dragged the poor mother away. Sarah tried to explain that she only wanted to see her happy, but Aisha pushed her hand away, and in that moment Sarah slipped on the pavement and fell, hitting her shoulder on a sharp edge. She winced in pain but smiled anyway, saying, "I'm fine, Beta, don't worry." But Aisha said nothing. She simply turned and walked away, leaving Sarah sitting on the cold ground alone. That night Sarah could not lift her arm properly, but she still cooked for Aisha, hiding her pain. Every movement felt like fire running through her bones. But she didn't let a sound escape. When Aisha returned, she didn't look at her mother. The guilt had not yet begun to bloom. She went straight to her room, slamming the door, unaware of the slow tears in the kitchen. Days passed and Sarah's injury worsened. She began having difficulty working, but she hid it, fearing Aisha would worry. Meanwhile, Aisha's teacher called the parents for a special meeting. Sarah forced herself to go, despite the pain, and when she entered the room, the teacher looked shocked, seeing her arm swollen and bruised. She asked what happened, and Sarah simply said, "I slipped." But Aisha suddenly felt something break inside her. She remembered pushing her mother. She remembered the fall. She remembered ignoring her cries that night. And something cold crawled up her spine. The guilt she always pushed away now dragged itself into her chest and refused to leave. When they returned home, Aisha quietly watched her mother struggle to lift a simple jug of water. She saw her hands shaking. She saw her trying to hide her wince. She saw the truth: her mother was hurt because of her. And she was the reason Sarah suffered. She was the reason Sarah cried. She felt a wave of shame hit her harder than anything she ever felt. She realized her mother never embarrassed her. It was she who failed her mother. It was she who forgot the hands that raised her. It was she who abandoned the woman who sacrificed everything. That night, Aisha entered the kitchen and saw her mother sitting on the floor trying to cut vegetables with one hand. Aisha's heart broke. She knelt beside her, took the knife from her, and whispered in a trembling voice, "Ammi, please stop, let me do it." Sarah looked surprised, then smiled gently. But Aisha began to cry, her voice shaking as she said, "I hurt you, I pushed you, Ammi, I said horrible things, I'm so sorry." Sarah raised her uninjured hand and wiped her daughter's tears, saying, "You are my child, I can never hate you." But Aisha sobbed harder, realizing the depth of a mother's love, a love she had been blind to her whole life. From that day, Aisha changed. She began taking care of her mother, supporting her at work, protecting her from others, and slowly rebuilding the bond she had almost destroyed. She walked beside her mother proudly, telling everyone, "This is my greatest strength, my Ammi." Her mother's injury healed, but the emotional scar remained as a reminder of how cruel she once was. Yet it also became the turning point that transformed her into someone better. And in the quiet of one evening, as the sun sank behind the city, Aisha held her mother's hand and silently promised herself she would never let her be hurt again, not by the world, and never by her own heart again.